You know the feeling. We've all been there. That one crucial task is just sitting there, staring you in the face, and yet you do absolutely nothing. You tell yourself, I'll do it later, or tomorrow. But here's the thing, this isn't some new modern problem. It's a human one. And for a problem that's been around forever, well, the answers are often just as timeless. So let's dive into an ancient protocol for action that just cuts right through all that noise of procrastination. Our journey starts not with some productivity guru, but with a really old story from the Indian text, the Panchatantra. Now, it's a tale about two fish and a frog, which sounds simple, but it holds a powerful lesson on action that has lasted for centuries. So pay close attention, because one of these friends really holds the key. Just imagine you're in a pond, relaxing, and you overhear those words. That's exactly what happened to our three friends. Some fishermen walked by, saw this pond just teeming with life, and they made a plan. That one sentence creates an immediate, unavoidable deadline. It's a clear and present danger. Suddenly, the clock is ticking. So meet the first fish, Shatabudi, which literally means 100 wits. This guy was a master of 100 different strategies. When he heard the fisherman, yeah, he was concerned, but he was also super confident that his intellect could outsmart any simple net. And then you have his friend, Sahasrabudi, or 1,000 wits. If you thought the first fish was smart, this one was a certified genius who knew 1,000 ways to escape. He basically just scoffed at the danger. I mean, a simple net, that was no match for his brilliant mind. And then there was the third friend, Ikabudi, the frog. His name means one wit. He only had a single piece of wisdom, a really simple, almost primal instinct. When you hear a clear threat, you act. You don't sit around and debate, you don't overanalyze, you just move. And this, right here, perfectly illustrates the core conflict. While the two brilliant fish were busy debating all their complex escape strategies, weighing their options, and just feeling totally secure in their intelligence, the frog, he just said goodbye to his friends and left. He hopped right out of that pond and went to a nearby well. He used his one wit, the wit of immediate action. The outcome was as brutal as it was predictable. The next morning, the fishermen came back. The net was cast, and for all their 100,000 wits, the fish were caught, and well, that was the end for them. The frog, on the other hand, was perfectly safe in his new home. You see, the story isn't an attack on intelligence. It's a huge warning about misusing it. So the crucial point here is that intelligence is never a substitute for action. The story really forces us to ask ourselves, why do we so often act like the fish? Why do we analyze ourselves into total paralysis when the path forward is actually pretty clear? Let's explore this through some of the world's oldest strategic texts. Okay, now let's switch gears and look at this like a strategist. This is a mindset that sees the world in terms of power, opportunity, and risk. And from this point of view, procrastination isn't just about being lazy. It is a catastrophic failure of leadership. And I'm talking about the leadership of your own life. There's this ancient guide on statecraft, the Arthashastra, and it views a leader's life as one of constant, purposeful action. So think of yourself as the king or the queen of your own life. Your kingdom is your goals, your health, your work. The text basically argues that a ruler who delays is just inviting chaos and ruin. Inaction isn't rest, it's literally giving up your throne. Now, what's really fascinating about this slide is how it frames the consequences. The Arthashastra is brutally clear. Prompt action, that increases your power and happiness. It secures your future. Delayed action, on the other hand, it actively invites trouble and makes you vulnerable. It's not a neutral choice. It's a destructive force that, in the language of the text, excites popular fury, or in our case, that feeling of self-loathing and anxiety. Okay, so we know inaction is a strategic failure. But what about that little voice in your head that says, what's the point? You know, if it's meant to be, it'll be. Let's take on that classic excuse, destiny. So the Panchatantra does acknowledge that destiny plays a role. It presents this idea that fate kind of chooses certain people for certain roles, almost like a director casting a play. And honestly, it's a comforting thought, right? It kind of lets us off the hook. If we're chosen, it'll happen. If not, why even bother? And this brings us to a huge question that fuels so much of our inaction. I mean, if the script is already written, does our struggle, our effort, our action, does any of it even matter? Is it all just some big illusion? Well, the ancient thinkers would say that's a really dangerous way to look at it. And here is the powerful answer. What a brilliant metaphor, right? It tells us that destiny is only one hand, Your effort, that's the other hand. A plan, a fate, a destiny, it just cannot be realized without your determined effort. You have to bring your hand to meet the other one to make the clap. So destiny doesn't replace effort, it absolutely demands it. We've seen that inaction is a failure of strategy and it's a misunderstanding of destiny. But now, let's explore the deepest reason for our delay, one that has less to do with our to-do lists and way more to do with the actual purpose of our lives. The sages of the Upanishads, they offer a pretty radical perspective. They suggest that our day-to-day procrastination is really just a symptom of a much, much bigger delay. We get stuck on all these trivial tasks because we are fundamentally distracted from our most important task, understanding who we really are. This reveals the ultimate procrastination. We choose the temporary thing over the eternal thing. We put off seeking real self-knowledge just to chase things that are eventually going to pass away. We're so busy with what feels urgent that we completely neglect what is truly important. So, how do we put all of this together? Well, you take the frog's clarity, the strategist's resolve, and the sage's wisdom, and you combine them to form a simple 3-step protocol for action. All right, here it is. First, you have to see the situation with the crystal clarity of the frog. Don't let your big brain complicate a simple threat or a clear opportunity. Assess and then decide. Second, you have to act. You have to bring your hand to meet destinies. Just remember that no great outcome happens without your determined effort. And third, direct that action. Aim it not just at clearing your inbox, but at goals that are truly meaningful and eternal. It's so important to understand that this is not about the 2-minute rule or some other clever trick to get you started. This is a fundamental shift in your perspective. It's about totally transforming your relationship with action itself and viewing it as a strategic, necessary, and deeply meaningful part of life. Ultimately, when you boil it all down, this ancient wisdom points to a simple truth. The mark of a wise person isn't how much they know, but their capacity for decisive action. And not just any random action, but action that's guided by a purpose that goes way beyond the temporary desires of the day. And so, this explainer leaves you with one final question to think about. Look past the laundry, the emails, all the daily chores for a second. What is the one great, meaningful, timeless thing that you've been putting off? And what one simple action can you take right now to finally begin?